So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this year's Leadership Forum on Artificial Intelligence in Business, Threat or Opportunity. We're really delighted to have you all here, and also we're really happy to be again at Banque de Luxembourg, so thank you for hosting us. And thank you to our sponsor, LuxDays, as well, for sponsoring the event and making it possible to actually be here tonight, so thank you. Also, welcome and thank you to you, all panelists. You will have an opportunity in a few minutes to introduce yourself. You will be doing it much better than I will. So that's on the schedule. However, I'm curious, how many of you are currently using ChatGPT or Bing or any other AI tool in your everyday life? Hands up. So it's definitely more than majority. There's a few people who haven't explored it yet. Now, if we think about it, if we had asked this question just 12 months ago, would it be the same? How many of you would actually have been using it or being aware that you're using it? Probably fewer, because it has become a very, very important topic. And it is constantly being discussed. What can we be doing with it? How can it help us? Is it a threat? Is it an opportunity? There's different viewpoints on it. And this is what we're here to discover tonight with all of you. We will be also having Q&A at the end. So please do, if you have any questions, keep them. And you will have the opportunity to ask them. What I'm doing is to say, as the chair of the BCC People and Leadership Group, I have been organizing this event together with Keith and the rest of the group. Could I maybe get our group members to just quickly stand up so that people can see that you are actually also active and here and we're not just two on the scene? Putting events together can sometimes need a lot of hands, so everyone has come with input and suggestions and help and everything, so thank you also to everyone in the group. Now, I don't want to take much of your time. I'll be moderating together with Keith, and then I actually just want to say over to you, Keith, and to the panelists.
Thank you very much, Lena. Yes, you don't want to hear much from me. You want to know who these wonderful people are. We've got, I was going to say 5 great people. We've actually got 6 great people, impressive people on the stage today.
7?
But it was rehearsed. But what you've got here are people that really know their stuff. And so we'll use this opportunity, or you should use this opportunity, please, to ask them questions at the end, because it's invaluable. But I would dearly love you, please, if you would, we'll go around the table from starting with Rom to introduce yourselves and say, who are you? What do you do? Thank you.
Geez, I'm the first, right? First of all, thank you for giving this opportunity. It's a privilege to be on this stage with some very, very interesting, distinguished professionals who I know in Luxembourg. I'm Rom. quick background. I'm an electronics engineer with a degree in labor relations and also an MBA. So I have worked all my life for big tech, and now I'm running a company called Softfbrik in Luxembourg for the last 3 years. I'm also an external advisor to the European Commission on the upcoming Artificial Intelligence Act. So I'm involved in some capacity there, and we're going to talk about it. It's a fascinating topic, and honestly, I think we have few answers, but most of the answers actually lies with the audience here. It's an extremely engaging topic, so look forward to the discussion and the questions, actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.
Please.
Hi everyone, I'm Genna Elvin. I'm the co-founder of Tadaweb. It's quite funny that we're here talking about AI. Is my microphone okay? It seems very loud. Yeah, no, it's quite funny that we're talking about AI here, because I think what we're doing with Tadaweb is that we're a small data platform based on the human process. So we use and leverage AI, but we're really fundamentally driven by the actions that humans take and the investigations that humans do when it comes to open source intelligence. So we started Tadaweb in 2011, so one of the pioneering startups in the Luxembourg tech scene. We've now grown to a little bit over 150 with offices globally, and we're still really dedicated to the mission of understanding how humans can have an impact in such a changing world. And so this is why it's a topic that's really going to be interesting to discuss tonight, because I think I'm going to certainly focus on the areas in which we need to focus on how humans can really influence and shape the future of AI.
Voila. So my name is Kallstenius, Swedish by origin. I used to lead the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, the largest research institute here in Luxembourg. I was doing that for 5 years, and then I moved on during the summer, and now I'm starting up 3 different companies, actually. And 2 of them are related to AI. One of them is working on AI for testing and verification. So it relates to the AI Act. How can we make sure that AI doesn't make mistakes? Because when you use ChatGPT, you are not sure whether it makes a mistake or not. And the question is how we can verify that. And that's not something that you only want to do, and it's also necessary to do, because we have new regulation coming. I think we'll discuss that at length. And the second topic is AI and social behavior. And I think the blend between AI and the soft sciences, I'm a physicist, and we use AI for machine learning of materials, discovery, such. We're used to that. But AI and psychology, AI and socionomy, and AI and history, that's the soft science and hard science meeting each other. It's a wonderful blend, and AI is very much an enabler for this kind of transversal interdisciplinary topic. So I think it's a fantastic time to do research in this topic.
Thank you, Thomas.
I have to impress now, right? After those speakers. My name is Lorenzo. I'm a partner at the law firm of Elvin and Overy, and I'm heading the IP data and tech practice there. And my contribution to this panel will be twofold, because obviously as a data and tech lawyer, I'm advising clients on the legal aspects of data protection and the upcoming AI regulation, helping them to develop their products in compliance or use AI in compliance with the rules. But also our firm has been worldwide the first law firm who used Harvey on an exclusive license basis. So it's a ChatGPT-4 based large language model tool, which is shaped only for legal industry. And so I can also share, if you're interested, some experience on how to implement such a tool in a company, what we did in practice, for instance, to keep data confidential, and so governance-wise. So those are aspects, if you're interested, I can share also the user experience or the implementer experience on that side.
Thank you. Can you hear me correctly? Okay, thank you. So my name is Yannick Huchard, so I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Banque de Luxembourg. So Bill Bank is one of the largest banks in Luxembourg, and also the CTO of a startup in the book industry, mostly. So I started my career as a software engineer, and AI was one of the first topics that I was gotten really hooked, in fact. I wanted to do a PhD in AI, but the path was a little bit different, I would say. And everything came back, 2.5 years, I would say, when OpenAI released GPT, but as a model, mostly as an API. And one of the things in my career is that we always want to accelerate the IT development. That's one of the main things. You know, most of you are connected with the IT department where you always ask more and more, and we have to deliver more and more. And AI is really a powerful technology for doing that. So that's currently that's where we are operating and thinking about how to leverage AI.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to kind of ask general questions, and Lena is going to ask specific questions of the individuals, and of course you can ask whatever you like when we come to the end of this. But we're going to leave the names up there because I think if you haven't connected with them already, you really ought to, because they're a very valuable group of people, so link in. I think we should start, if you don't mind, from a very beginning, and maybe with you, and work backwards this time. What is artificial intelligence?
Oh, okay. Okay, like how many hours do we have right now? Just no. Okay, quick definition. So if you think about artificial intelligence today, it's mostly about machine learning and deep learning. So it's a field in the IT that will emulate human intelligence, or I would say biological intelligence, because it's not only about humans. So you have different aspects of that. So you have, well, regular machine learning where you have, I would say, discriminative algorithms that we're going to classify or recognize some aspect, I would say. You have other aspects which are related to deep learning, which is mostly about neural network, which is actually simulate how the brain is actually operating. You have another, let's say, field that is really, really interesting, which is reinforcement learning, which is push for reaching a goal based on some parameters and some, I would say, yes, some things that you want to achieve. And maybe the one that is making a lot of noise are a subset of deep learning, which is a large language model. This is the basis of ChatGPT in general. So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's an architecture, specific architecture in deep learning. And the goal for GPT is really to generate things based on statistical methods, I would say. So if you start from the very beginning, it's quite simple in the idea, meaning that it will take a context and try to generate, in fact, the most logical stuff. But in the end, it's very, very, very powerful because it's trained over a large set of data.
Okay, thank you. What would you like to add to that or take away from that, Catherine?
Maybe some examples, because when we talk about AI, as you say, today everybody thinks about large language models, the ChatGPTs, etc. But I guess we've been using AI before ChatGPT 4 came up. So if you just look at the chatbots that you're using maybe when you do online shopping, or when you're in the financial sector industry, your company has been using AI already to do fraud checks or for KYC maybe, and other use cases. So AI as such is not new. It just got quite some attention with the ChatGPT 4 revolution, if I can call it like that, and the new, the access that mass has now to these kind of tools. But I guess, it's important to look at what do we talk about. It's not just the ChatGPT 4 angle. It's much more than that. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas.
Well, I mean, AI and machine learning are often used kind of in an interchangeable way, but strictly speaking, AI is a very generic set of technologies which somehow mimics a human-like intelligence reasoning. So that includes large language models, computer vision, of course, and then you have machine learning, which is a subset. And machine learning is for computer scientists something that you don't program it actually learns. And it's something that you don't have code in the traditional way. You have a learning-based system, so it's a statistical system. Maybe something I wanted to throw out, because I think it's interesting to think around it, is that AI learns from the past and it predicts into the future. And that makes AI very good at predicting something which is very close to the past. But when the future is radically different, it fails. And that's something we should bear in mind. AI is very good at connecting the dots, but it's not good at predicting radically different futures, because it's not designed like that. It's basically a statistical system. Very, very advanced, very sophisticated, but it cannot really predict a very radically different future. I think that's something we can maybe elaborate a bit more.
Thank you. I see a lot of nodding going on there, but Genna, would you add to what Thomas has said by saying it doesn't do it yet?
No, I think I'd take a different tact. I think we've spoken a lot on a great technical sort of deep dive and context and things like that. I think one thing that I find really interesting is more about the timing. So we're seeing everything change radically now. And a lot of questions that are emerging is, why is there so much radical change now? And if you think about something like the flying car, it's been 50 years that we talk about flying cars, and I think Peter Thiel once said, you've been talking about flying cars, and we ended up with 140 characters. But I think what we're seeing is that, Moore's law, for those that you're familiar, we're reaching this rapid phase of the end of Moore's law. And so that's why we're going to see sort of not only the emergence of incredible, AI, but we're also going to see the emergence of multiple different areas, and we're seeing it. We're seeing exponential technologies that are suddenly now converging together like never before, which means that, the next 10 years are going to be the fastest changing 10 years, and then even furthermore going on forward. So I think, what would be a really interesting take would be discussing the points around timing and speed, and how we have to be more reactive than ever before to ensure that we are aware of biases that we're creating, and all those kind of things. So I think more that chronological kind of deep dive would be really interesting.
Thank you. Rom, anything to add to that?
I'll try to connect what the other speakers said. We live in the age of artificial narrow intelligence, where the AI, as we call it, it learns in itself and it reinforces, so it's predictive. However, there is a theory, and there is a gentleman, ex-Googler called Ray Kurzweil theory of singularity. He says that soon we will reach a state where the AI will be able to interact and mime without any human dependency, and that will be artificial general intelligence. For easy reference, if you have seen the movie Her, that's an example. Most experts say we are still 30, 40 years away from that, but we just don't know. To Genna's point, science is moving so fast, we can potentially reach there faster. What sort of Pandora's box that will open, we don't really know. That's a part of the discussion tonight. But if anyone is interested, and by the way, I'm a geek, so I'm going to give some references also. There is a blog called Wait But Why, and written by Tim Urban. In 2014, he wrote a 2-part series called The Genesis of AI. I recommend to read that. It will take 2 hours of your time, but it's fantastic. The Genesis of AI by Tim Urban.
Okay, thank you for that recommendation, Ron. For the layperson, I would have to say that generally when you're discussing this whole AI, they fall into different categories. They're either a little bit afraid of what it will bring or excited. So I'm going to ask you perhaps a question you wouldn't have expected, but emotionally, how do you feel about the future now that AI is with us? And Ron, start with you.
I feel tremendously privileged, to be honest, because, look at me, I'm like literally sitting here and discussing it. So I am, let's say, on the right side of the river, and hand on heart, at the end of the day, we are all self-centric, right? We all think of our own incentives. So if you are into tech right now, into applied AI as we are using, and like talking to investors, customers every day, I feel very positive about it. However, almost regularly I hear stories of people who are not as fortunate, and I feel it is our responsibility to put up a hand and help the brethren who may not be that privileged to use AI the way we are using.
Okay, thank you. Genna, what's your feeling? You a bit scared or happy or?
No, I agree that I think now is a really interesting time to be in tech and to be in society as a whole. I think now is a time, as you could argue with things like climate change and things like that, but if we don't actually have an awareness of, what our sort of actions could result in. Every day we, as you mentioned before, Catherine, about, we've been using AI for a long time. How did you arrive here today? Did you use Google Maps? Did you use Waze? Well, there you go. Where AI is already dictating the way in which you behave. So I think we need to understand and create a level of awareness that if we don't train the models, in accordance with our values as human beings, if we don't sort of include the notion of common sense, which AI is completely lacking at this time, then we could be getting into dangerous territory. It's now that we have to lay the ground rules if we want to really sort of have AI augmenting us as human beings rather than sort of taking a direction where we could face ourselves, find ourselves in trouble.
Thank you. Thomas, for good or for evil?
I'm a techno-optimist. I love technology, and I've always been optimistic about it. I mean, technology is not good or bad per se. It can be used for good purposes, and I think it's our role to make sure that it's good for the good purpose. I think we're the good guys, but also protect ourselves from the misuse of technology, and that's why the EU AI Act is so important, because AI needs to be regulated, but it will be regulated in a conscious way. But I think Europe is taking the right step, and it's interesting that Europe is doing that right now, because we are really, the EU AI Act is the first legal framework in the world for artificial intelligence. And it's a legal framework, it's not like a wish, it's really becoming law, and I think you can discuss that much more. But it's something that is very cool, that if we do this right, it's a bit like the GDPR a few years back, it's really standing on that.
It sort of moves us on, and I realise I haven't got either of your emotions yet, but it moves us on to this whole point. Should we be constraining what we do with AI? Should there be laws to prevent certain things happening? And maybe I can ask you that.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to come with the AI regulation. Everything which is harmful to individuals will be prohibited. So I think that's something, there are certain things that are going to be prohibited. It's not the first law in the world, it's just the first one which is so broad, because when I looked up for another presentation a while ago, what laws there were out there, I was surprised. I think, I don't have the figures on top of my mind again, but something like 2010, there were 3 laws in the world. One in, I think, Nigeria, which was regulating weather apps. So that was already very specific. And now I think we have 260 or so, but not always very specific topics. And I think there you're right, the AI regulation is really the one who tries to have a wholesome view on it. Afraid or not, as a lawyer specializing in tech, I'm excited about the new demands that my clients will have, because they will need more advice on that front. As a company implementing it, I have to share that there were quite some concerns when we started using Overy, that's our tool that we use at Overy, because the tool is pretty powerful. You can draft a contract within 20 seconds. Then the question comes up, do you need junior lawyers? How do you train junior lawyers if they don't have to do the whole work as we old guys needed to do it from scratch? So I think there are some concerns just in practice. I can tell you from, and then I stop, I can tell you just from our firm, it was mostly embraced, and I don't think that we will need less lawyers, but we will need different lawyers. So the lawyers that we will need in the future will need to be much more tech savvy, will have to have additional training, so having just the legal skills is no longer going to be enough. For instance, we all had to learn how to do proper prompting, so giving the instruction to the tool in order to get the desired results. So the job changes. Yeah, so I would say there are concerns, but the question is, but not a fear.
Okay, thank you. Yannick, so you get a double question. So how do you feel about it, and should we be constraining it in your opinion?
Okay. Like Romit, I would say I feel really privileged, to be living in this area. So the thing is, I think we experience, in fact, the birth of internet now, mobile, and then now artificial intelligence. It's basically the same kind of revolution. And I have to say that when the first time I played with GPT-3, that was the early version, I was literally sweating because we made such a shift in terms of how we could interact with the machine. It was something different. So I'm used to code machines, basically. So what we code, we code it, and the machine say exactly what you code, or execute exactly what you code. With artificial intelligence, it's a bit different. So you interact with the machine, but you don't exactly know what's going to come afterwards. So there is a bit of magic in it, but it's definitely not magic. It's pretty purely statistics. But at the same time, you start thinking about what's coming ahead. So I'll take another example. My daughter, she wants to be a graphic designer. When Midjourney came out, I was thinking about what would be the future of her work, basically, because they immediately said, if you want to be a simple graphic designer, it's definitely too late, because the machine is already doing what most professionals are doing or achieving today. So you need to think about something different. So I told her, well, maybe you should think about doing something greater, probably write a story, a book, whatsoever, that will, let's say, create the aggregation of different kind of art where AI could be an accelerator to what you want to put forward. But it triggered a lot of questions about, what will be the future, for instance, of work. There are works where you have simple tasks or automation that will disappear because AI compress everything and make a simple task for that. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to create much more.
I think that's a massive question, what will the world of work look like? We'll definitely come to that.
Yeah.
But Lena, I think you had some specific questions for some of our guests.
I do. Thank you, Keith. Catherine, actually, I want to start with you, and it's been slightly touched on already with the regulations, but I'm wondering, there are some ethical considerations as well that we should keep in mind. And this is important, especially as we integrate the AI into our daily lives. So what steps are being taken today and hopefully also in the future to ensure that we have this responsible development of the AI?
So the term of ethical or responsible AI has been floating around, and you will find lots of info on that if you Google it. I think one good start for it is to look at the 10 principles that the UNESCO has published on ethical AI. It touches on different topics, on transparency, on security, on privacy, on all of those things. And they have even a tool where you can do an assessment on whether your project is going to be considered as ethical. And those same principles, if you open the AI regulation, you will find them in more detail, in legalese language, more explained. But I think those are a good starting point if you want to become familiar with the topic and also see what elements are covered. There's also ESG as one. So as I said, different angles, but all of them important to keep in mind, and not just when building an AI-based tool, but also throughout the life cycle of the tool. You need to have a governance in place which ensures that those considerations are taken into account all through the life cycle of the tool. For instance, that it doesn't create biases that then discriminate people. So constant checks will be needed. An ethics committee maybe in your company that should overlook it. So different elements, but I think Genna can also add to ethics quite a bit. So.
No, I think you covered it perfectly.
Yeah, I think that's...
Great, thank you. Do you have anything to add to it also in your experience from being the first law firm using it?
Well, we had one of the concerns that we were really focusing on when we implemented our tool was security. We are professionals which are subject to professional secrecy. So how to use our tool, which is a generative AI, and it's not ours, we have just a license, but I kind of have adopted it. How to use the tool in a way that we do not first compromise the data of our clients, not disclose information that shouldn't be out there, right? And there we have built an encryption layer. It's because we have, it's hosted on Microsoft, and then we have this encryption layer. So basically, data we input is kind of kept in our secure space. When we started with the tool, we had also a phased approach. So first it was only partners who could use it. And we created 10 golden rules. Like the first, of course, as we had an exclusive license pre-launch, the first rule was do not talk about Harvey. Okay. Second rule was do not input client data in Harvey, because at that point in time we did not have the encryption layer yet. It was still in the build-up phase. Then I think do not believe everything that Harvey spits out, because those tools are very powerful, and with all the benefits that you can see, they also create false information which are called hallucinations. And there are quite some impressive ones out there. I mean, I tried one thing which I can share to show you how off it can be sometimes. I inputted a question, let's say, what articles did Catherine Lorenzo publish in Luxembourg? And it told me that apparently I have written a book on how to organize an ESG-friendly Christmas dinner.
Congratulations.
So I have no clue what data this thing pulled in order to come. I don't know. Anyway, so that shows you that not everything is perfect yet. You need to, when you get something like a contract, it can be very good, it can be wrong. If you ask it for research on certain articles, it will sometimes have invented stuff, but invented in the sense of based on, you can explain it better than me, based on the data which it was trained on, or the whole internet basically, it kind of combines things and then it comes up with something that's not correct. We have built internally, because we are a law firm, but we have 200 engineers who kind of develop solutions also for us. So we have a top-upper that we've built for that, where we automatically can show all the references, so the sources that were used to generate the output, which makes it much easier to verify than if something is correct or not. So just to show what it can also look like if it's not working the right way. And then the other thing, I think another risk is intellectual property, because everything which is created based on AI, and as I think I haven't seen any country in the world which accepted that this is a creation that would be protected by copyright. So that was another risk we had to tackle. How do we make sure that what we produce, because as a lawyer, what you produce, your copyright is kind of your asset. How to make sure. So basically we have to rework everything in a very strong way. And now we've built, and then I stop talking about that one. We've built another element of it, which is that we now have our own know-how and in the database, not shared, so not training the whole tool just for us. And so basically we can also create new documents based on the templates from our own database and stuff like that. So there we have know-how protected content, which is then also protected.
I've got a question. Do you see differences in terms of regulation compared to the EU zone, the USA, China?
For IP, you mean?
Not necessarily, but the way that we regulate, or we want to regulate AI, basically.
Yes, I mean, obviously I'm just an expert in EU and Lux laws, but for instance in the UK, the approach was for quite a while, I think they think of changing it now, that they do not want to regulate it, that they just published a white paper and then kind of
just use it.
couple of standards. I think the US are regulating bits and pieces. I saw in a press release today that there is a no fake bill that has been brought into the legal procedures in order to regulate, for instance, deep fakes and stuff like that. What I would assume is that it goes as we did in the past. We have the AI regulation, like GDPR, being a front runner, and then countries start copying it in some shape or form.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So I think I'll actually continue with you, Ram, because you were recently, is it 2 weeks ago or something, that you were at the summit on the EU and the AI Act and those discussions. So what can you tell us about this? What's coming up, or what are you allowed to tell us?
Let me think for a minute. A very basic primer. So the way the AI Act will work is basically if you have any algorithm that can be classified as AI, and they have put in a description pretty close to what we have discussed, then you have to classify whether it is a high-risk algorithm or not. Typically, anything that is defense, security, healthcare, financial data, private information will be classified as high risk. Everything else will be low risk. It is self-assessment. Now, should it be self-assessment or there should be an external body? This is something the Parliament and the Commission is right now deliberating. They're planning some sort of an advisory body, and potentially by 2024 to 2025 timeline, they want to create this mechanism. It will take 12 months to 18 months because industry needs time to adopt and all that. So that's one. Now, if any one of you, and I'm deliberately throwing it to the audience so that it's relevant for you, if you are in finance, healthcare, or any insurance or any regulated industry, then you will have to do something called conformity assessment. Already in your companies, if you have compliance officers, they would be doing conformity assessment for most of your GDPR-related, data-related, security-related processes. Now this will be an additional one. How to do that, that's the part they're deliberating right now. If you are an engineer or an AI enthusiast, there is good news. One of the challenges that, and at least I as an entrepreneur, I have won the EU Horizon grant and all that, is extremely hard when you're creating a new business to follow all the processes. There is often a feeling amongst entrepreneurs that regulations tend to favor the status quo, the big players, big actors, and not the Prometheuses, the ones who are trying to change society. So this time, they have actually got to their credit, and it's extremely broad law. Remember, the lawmakers are also human. We have to allow them that. But they have tried to do something very interesting. They have tried to balance power. How? They have created a mechanism called sandbox, which is like a play zone where you can put in your own algorithms and test without any legal repercussion. I have been a part of the end of 2021 promotion when they tested it. It works, sometimes doesn't, but by and large it works. To scaling it up for like millions of companies, implementation is always the key. That is going to be the fun part. But at least as of now, the intention is there. There is also something I want to mention here. You usually don't see entrepreneurs support regulation, and I do, and it's good that in this panel most of us do. What often happens is that amongst entrepreneurs, there is this feeling that if anything that is regulated is going to curb them. And then I ask people that try to imagine going to Monaco for a Formula 1 race. If you are in Formula 1 in Monaco, street circuit, there are guardrails. Why are those guardrails there? Those guardrails are there to protect you and at the same time give the drivers the peace of mind that they can go at 350 kilometers per hour and not kill anyone. So think of regulations as smart guardrails that actually enables your business to grow faster. And this is something that I have been trying to preach and teach to whoever, that all the entrepreneurs, that you need to think of regulations as your ally and not as your enemy, and that can help you to actually make a lot of good strategic discussions. And when you tell that to investors and all, they love it.
That's a really, really good point, because yes, it can be very tedious to talk about all the regulations and admin stuff that you have to do as an entrepreneur. So absolutely, that's.
It's a strategic advantage. It is not you have to. That of course means getting into it, learning. And the problem is, the challenge is that a lot of you, especially if you are engineers, and I am an engineer, we hate to study law, right? Engineers don't love it. And but if you actually get into a bit of details of it, you see that there are a lot of mechanisms you can use to your advantage. So think of regulations as a strategic ally and not as an obstacle, and your business will actually prosper.
Excellent, thank you. You mentioned the financial sector as well, so I'm jumping to you, Yannick. I'm wondering about AI in the financial sector and what the emerging trends are for the leaders and what they should be aware of when it comes to the adoption of AI in the financial sector.
Okay. There are different aspects, I would say, in leverage in the financial sector. Though I would probably split into maybe three categories. The first one is what we can do for the customers. The second one is what we can do for the employees. And the last one is more about what we can do for protecting the financial industry, which ultimately is protecting the end consumer. For the first one is for the customer. Generally speaking, we try to have models that helps, for instance, doing some better investments or do some better savings. So it's more about piece of advice to the end user. That's where we mostly operate. And also to empower the customer to be autonomous. So for instance, when you go to the customer center, I would say, you can request some piece of information or increase my credit limits, for instance. You can do it automatically. So yeah, mechanism that you can do it from the application point of view, but the AI is also there to do it more gently, I would say. For the employee, that's where I would say it's probably the space where we can be more creative. And one of the things we push, for instance, at Build is that we have an AI model based on IBM Watson that is for human resources. So as an employee, you can request some activities, let's say things like I don't know, so changing, for instance, hours in the office, and you can request some pieces of information directly to Laura. Laura is the chatbot. But we can do much more. So, for instance, we are looking at how we can use AI, like, for instance, GitHub Copilot, or I would say AI like this, to help the developers to develop more, in fact, in the end, or do better quality, as Thomas was actually saying about how we can leverage AI. And at the same time, when you do it, the last space is more about how we can protect, in fact, the financial industry. So we talk about, for instance, anti-money laundering. That's one of the activities that is foundational to the financial industry. And that's where, for instance, we can, the thing is that when we have hits, so basically maybe there is a fraud or something like this, we talk about volume, so we can have like multiple hits, and that's something that cannot always be tackled by a human. So that's where AI is really interesting as a model, is that you can leverage the power of an artificial intelligence that can capture a lot of events, trying to aggregate them, make sense of it, saying, is it like a fraud attempt or not? And then if it's a fraud attempt, you can escalate that to a human. And then the human is actually in a position to decide whether it's something to deal with or just ignore and then feedback the model to learn from the experience, in fact.
Excellent, and I like that you're thinking about both customers and employees and everyone, so that everyone is considered. But before we go to the last two panelists' specific questions, I think we should go back to you, Keith, for a couple of general ones, just to loosen it up a bit.
Thank you, Lena. Okay, we touched upon it. We're going to go into it a bit more now. This whole idea, jobs in the future. If and there are many people here, they have children, they have grandchildren, they have people, they know AI is coming, they know it's going to be there for the future, they don't know if it's going to be something that their children can work on. Give me your views, please. The future as regards employment. Are we going to lose lots of jobs, or are we going to gain new ones? I'll start with you, Genna.
Yeah, sure. So I think sort of my background is actually not tech at all. It's a law degree and a psychology degree, followed by a couple of masters. So I love the mix between sort of really understanding what's happening sort of from the psychological level, and then also understanding how that has an impact on the outside world. And I think what we're going to see more and more of is the drastic need, and you can probably touch on this a lot better than I can, but for social sciences. For the anthropologists, for the amount of data that's coming through, we're going to need people that are data hygienists, making sure that there's going to be the emergence of a whole lot of different roles. Sure, the nature of a lot of sort of roles are going to change and sort of not be needed anymore, but I personally believe that there's going to be the emergence of a wide range of different kind of roles, even, and change in the current roles. Your point before when it came to the way in which lawyers interact with data, there's also going to be a massive change with the way in which teachers deal with data. I mean, how are we managing now with the influence of ChatGPT and the ability for students to basically, roll out their essays instead of confronting this with, wow, we need to ban ChatGPT from students, we need to sort of focus on educating teachers around, okay, how can we then, get an essay written by ChatGPT and then bring the students back in for them to critique it and then understand exactly what's going on. So, I think just as every single revolution that we've seen, when just as the Industrial Revolution and things like that, where people think, okay, machines are going to put us out of work, I think we're going to see a new wave. I think we need to be completely open in, with regard to adapting to what that means. And I think we're going to see a massive rise in the role of social sciences, and the true things that really make us human are going to really, take the spotlight.
Thank you. Thomas?
Well, I'm not an expert on that topic, but if you look historically, and continue a bit what Yannick said, if you look we have had a number of waves of technology shifts, and if you look to them, there's been a kind of downturn of employment shortly after the shift, but afterwards the employment always picks up. There is no evidence that these technology shifts have created unemployment. Actually, it's created new types of jobs, but never unemployment. And another fact is that the more automated countries in this world have the lowest unemployment. The more automated the country is, the lower the unemployment is. So there is no really evidence that this would create that problem. So I'm quite confident that this will not be the case this time.
So optimistic.
What do you
Before I answer that, I have a small question for you, actually, to make it more fun. Or for anyone actually here, do you know which is geopolitically the most important European company today? Clue, Netherlands. Yes. Okay. It's a company called ASML. Okay. It does chip lithography. Now, why is that important? In this entire discussion, there are 3 parts. We are discussing the third part, which are the models. Genna mentioned the second part, which is data. An average law firm today is processing 1,300 times more data than what they were doing 20 years back. They have to analyze video data, they have to analyze audio evidence, things like that. But there is a first part. And that first part is, right now in this room, we have at least 1,000 microchips. I'm speaking to you through a microchip. All of us have mobile phones. You have phone. These lights, everything has microchips. And these microchips all have silicon. Okay, and there's a book called Chip War, actually, you can check that. That is going to decide a lot of the future of AI. So there will be a lot of new jobs. There will be jobs like data hygienist. There will be a lot of jobs in the interaction between software, hardware, and behavior. What those job descriptions will look like, we have no clue. But for people who are curious, there will be new and new opportunity like any other technical shifts.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Yannick?
There are several aspects in what we've discussed. The first one is you will see. I mean, what we see already is that people using AI are just much faster, I would say, in doing their own jobs, I would say, and they are able to do much more in general. So I will take my example. I am not a graphic designer at all. Using Midjourney or DALL-E 3 whatsoever, I'm able to do stuff I wasn't able to do before. So I like, for instance, to write stories or an article, and I can augment all this aspect with graphics, with audio. I can generate podcasts automatically with an AI, which actually human level speaker. And so I'm not the one speaking, but for me, it's to gain speed and experience as well. So there are things that we are able to do autonomously that we wouldn't be able to do just beforehand, I would say. That's one thing. And then there is another aspect that Genna touched upon is the learning, basically. So today, it's a simple question to the panel. If you can go to school and you have an AI that answers everything for you, what is actually the added value of school? That's a real question here.
My son asked me that question a week ago.
And I thought a lot about it, and I haven't came up with a real answer, but I think there is a shift to do, where we previously or up to now, we are focusing on retaining information instead of learning way of thinking, I would say, which is totally different. So STEM is really into this aspect. Psychology, I think, is also in that aspect. So there are some science in general that foster the thinking, the mechanism, the patterns, the frameworks, instead of like focusing on the raw knowledge. Where in the end you can end up in a society where a human will be really pushing for creativity, for thinking, maybe working in alliance with other humans, and completed with AI, basically, which will be the memory of humans, basically, or humanity as a whole. But there is I would say, an interesting shift at some point where, if you're even unable to assess the level of a student because he's using AI or not, and you can not really detect that. Well, at some point you need to say, well, maybe we should just give up and change the paradigm and do something different, I would say. And then the last point is, from my perspective, is robotic. So you know that, for instance, Boston Dynamics, Tesla are pushing for having, like with Optimus, are pushing for having robots. So what did it say is, so far we were thinking about, well, maybe the creative industry is being disrupted by ChatGPT, but then what will happen when the robots will be there to do, for instance, menial tasks? It could be in, I would say, supply chain for vehicles or cleaning streets and stuff like that. So what does it say about humans? What is the added value of the manual in the end? But I believe that deep expertise in, for instance, I don't know, very precise jobs where you need human precision level, or I would say absolute creativity, where you don't generate things from the past, because in the end, Midjourney is like agglomerating stuff that already been done. But new art style, new piece of work and stuff like that, I think that's where the added value of human will come in the end.
I think those are fantastic points, thank you. I would throw in, actually, that I'm going to tell my grandchildren to become either plumbers or electricians, because at the moment neither AI nor robots can do that. But Catherine, what would you like to add to that? How do you see the future?
I think a similar discussion has probably already been carried out when the internet became a boom, and nobody died, no jobs were gone. We just all embraced it and we used it in our everyday life, and now we can't live without it anymore. Similar things will probably happen to us when it comes to AI and the ChatGPT things that are out there, or similar LLMs. We need to embrace them. It's there. And now we need to learn how to build them into our daily life, into our companies. And as you say, there are things when maybe we will no longer draft lots of contracts from scratch because we will have them. But when there is a contract negotiation, a difficult situation, when you're sitting together in the same conference room and you have the emotional intelligence part that needs to kick in, I think that's going to be then potentially the added value. So I don't think we will lose jobs, but I mentioned it earlier, we will all, depending on our profession, maybe the creative professions will have to change the way they create deliverables. We will have to change the way we create our legal advice and what our added value as a human being is. But I think we will all stick around in the next years with similar professions, plus a couple of new ones. Some will disappear. But I think it will just be a change of the job, not as you said, not a disappearance of
Thank you,
jobs.
great views, really. Last question from me, a general one, anyone can answer it. It seems that a lot of us are putting personal data into AI. We're using ChatGPT to prepare our CV or something else, and putting a lot of personal information in there, which is obviously being absorbed. How vulnerable are we going to be in the future because of what we're putting in now? Anyone answer?
Extremely.
Short answer, don't.
I mean, sort of, just touching on that quickly, I think there is the input of personal data, but coupled with that is that we've never been so connected than now. And so if you think about every single thing from your smart home to your printer to your, every single thing that we're sort of working with around us today is connected. And so that sets us up to be extremely vulnerable in the case of an attack. And we have to face it, attacks are, they will become more and more prevalent. They're already very, very prevalent. And so I think, just my sort of advice would be just sort of, how would you react if that news was on the front page of the newspaper? Or how would you react if suddenly everything that is connected to the internet around you no longer functions? And so if you constantly go with that more sort of defensive mentality when you go in towards things, it might make you think twice with what kind of information you're entering.
Very good. Anyone?
I'm a bit optimistic about that, in a sense that, I'll come back to the financial industry. In generally speaking, fraud happens mostly when a human is involved, not really when a machine is involved. So when I say I'm a bit optimistic, is that if I would say an AI that is good enough to take some decision based on my data and my habits and stuff like that. But I have also the proof that no human will actually intervene in a chain. I feel maybe more comfortable with that, to be honest. But then to come up to this situation, that's a different story because, humans are in the middle. Engineers are coding, adding AIs, and you have data analysts, and you have like data engineers and so forth. So to come up to this situation where the AI is there in autonomous mode, where no one is in the middle, where everything is encrypted, and we know that the storage is also guaranteed, and it's maybe the storage is also in the EU zone and not in the USA and stuff like that. I think there is a long way to go, in fact. But yeah, I'm still a bit optimistic about it.
Well, I mean, privacy is fundamentally about secrets, right? I have secrets, you have secrets, and sometimes we decide to share our secrets. We go to our doctor and explain that I have a problem, and if I don't share my secrets, I cannot get any treatment. But it's my choice to do so. And what we do now is we share a lot of our secrets in a very not considerate way, and that's a problem, right? If we start to share those secrets and they get into these neural networks, and it's, so I'm also concerned about it. Now, one thing I'm putting a bit more on optimistic view is we don't always have to share the data. We can sometimes share the models. I mean, we can train a model and we can share the model. So I don't think we always need to share data with each other. We can train information and models with each other, and in this way we can also start protecting the data, because often we don't need the data. We need some higher aggregation of it, which can be a trained model, or we can have some further information. So, but it's an interesting topic.
Thank you. Yeah, there are now AI models or AI apps where they are, and there's many coaches in the audience, where actually you can be coached by an AI model, which definitely worries me in terms of what particularly the young may be putting into the system. Anyway, thank you. Lena.
Shall we go back to a specific question? Because now we've been touching on the future in general and so on, and I'm wondering, what about Luxembourg? The private sector, the public sector, what are we seeing there? And you, Thomas, because you've been at the list before in your directing role, and now as an entrepreneur, how are you seeing it also combined with the science and technologies?
I think Luxembourg is based on trust, right? People trust this system, right? I mean, it's all about trust. I mean, we trust systems. When I fly a plane, I somehow trust the plane, but actually I don't trust the plane. I trust that they maintain the plane. I trust that the pilot has been trained. I trust that the system works. And when the system doesn't work, trust is gone. So Luxembourg is based on trust. We trust our investments here. We should trust our data. We trust AI. And Luxembourg should play on the trust card. And we're in a very prime position to do so, because we're a trustworthy country with a AAA ratings, all of this. So bring that trust into the new space. I think that's a great opportunity for Luxembourg to set up. And this is also why we should be in the forefront of the European AI Act, for example. We talked about creating a sandbox where we can test our system in a controlled environment. Yeah, Luxembourg should be the first one to do this, because then you can test your stuff and show this works. I mean, it's a golden opportunity for Luxembourg.
Is there anything that you can dig into of Luxembourg and what is happening at the moment in the AI sector?
Well, I mean, I think there are a lot of also startups around here who are thinking around this and trying to establish themselves around this. And one which I happen to lead myself is exactly doing this. How can we test our systems in a sandbox? I mean, it's a great. So we have a lot of research capacity in this country to do so. I think we just want to connect it to our industry players, so that's what we should talk about. I'm very optimistic about the Luxembourgish ecosystem here.
And also from the public sector, they are also supporting it and sufficiently, or are they behind or up front? How can we see them?
No, but I think we have a very supportive system. I think we should be very, very grateful for doing research in Luxembourg. It's a fantastic place to do so. We just need to think smart about it, because sometimes we buy big. We have a fantastic Meluxina is a big high-performance computer here, for example. Yes. That's great. But we need to think a bit smart about how we use this stuff, because we have the best broadband in the world, we have the best compute in the world, but we should also think about why couldn't we have a controlled large language model here in Luxembourg, which we don't have really. So I mean we could implement that. So we just need to continue that thought leadership here. But
so we need to work smart and we need to continue innovating. Great. Genna, I would like to go to you. And I'm wondering, how do you envision humans and AI working together in business? How do you see that?
Yeah, so I think, as mentioned in the intro, I think building a technology company that's completely dedicated to enhancing the human process puts me in sort of an interesting place to answer this, because we as a company and as founders believe strongly in the importance of humanness right through from the core values that we've created from day one to the technology we build. And there's nothing that can replace, particularly when it comes down to touching on what you mentioned as well about the process. So yeah, sure, it's great to enter keywords into a black box solution and then have answers that you think look cool, but have absolutely no idea of the process for which those answers came from. So we really focus on the process. I think where, what I say to the team and what I envision, would like to see happen is that AI is actually positioned as such that it augments the human. So it doesn't replace the human, it is there to augment the human. And you look at all of the amazing advances when it comes into particularly domains like medicine. The work that, the screening that we can use to diagnose cancer so much more efficiently and earlier than any sort of human brain could actually do. But then when the news isn't good, it's not a machine that you want to talk to finding out you've got stage 4 lung cancer. It's a human being. And so I think the job of the AI is to really make you more efficient in the way in which you can sort of, and I know this has been touched on already, but going back and saying, okay, that's augmenting the doctor's actual use of the data that's coming into it. I think that, again, mentioning it because I'm a little bit more, I wouldn't say pessimistic, but cautious, maybe than some of the others. I think we really need to set the rules, and we also need to really work on things like moral standards. These are sort of things that we really need to feed into the models as far as getting the AI to actually function like a human and think like a human and have the same morals as a human. And if we have technology that's emerging that's based on this similar moral compass to hopefully what humanity is, I know it's not always the case, but really ensuring that that moral compass guides the sort of and sets the guidelines of, okay, your job as an intelligent system is to make me more powerful and to make me better, not replace me. I think that's what we need to really set the standards for.
Excellent, thank you. Being conscious of time, I think before we open up to the discussion with you in the Q&A session, and I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, Keith, do you...
I think you've been patient long enough, and I'm sure you must have questions. So
will you jump down for the first
let me wander
question,
around with
maybe,
this.
and then I will come on the other side?
I have questions. The first one is, every time we have a computer program, as for AlphaGo, for instance, but it started with chess first, we always want it to beat human first. And for AlphaGo, it was the same. We put a program, we deep learned it, and it outsmarted Lee Sedang, that was the world champion. Do you think AI will also envision to outsmart human systematically, or just to accompany humans? For any of you. That's
will AI deem to outsmart humans at some point?
Well, that's precisely the hypothesis for artificial general intelligence. But as per the latest expert, and you can follow Ray Kurzweil or Nick Bostrom, we can talk after this, all of them are saying there's 30, 40 years till that. What will happen is that some specific skills will be replaced, and they're already better than humans. Question is, where do we use those skills? And as Genna pointed out, for example, we work with a lot of healthcare, and what we have realized is that all these information that we collect is extremely good for pattern matching, especially from an interoperability standpoint, taking a long journey of a cancer patient over decades, all that. That is very hard for humans, right? For a doctor to see you and remember that 20 years back you had this. That part, AI is fantastic. But after that, taking into account and taking a decision, this person doesn't potentially need chemotherapy, some pills and some exercise will be enough, and I'm simplifying. That decision, we are nowhere close, okay? So triaging, yes, but actual decision making, and there is also a legal liability. Remember, the company who is creating it will have to bear the liability. Already there are cases against Tesla, Uber, etc. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm saying one has to be cognizant of who the liability goes to. So net, at least I don't see AI superseding humans in all fields. In every field, there will be specific skill sets, and humans who will start using those AI. There's already some adage that you will not be replaced by AI, you will be replaced by humans who use AI better than you. So that's the point to remember.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I'll take a different example. A few years ago, in the bioengineering space, they were in the creation of, where we found out that CRISPR is basically a tool that can basically change, edit genes, I would say. The humans came up with something to make fluorescent dogs. So dogs that actually illuminate during the night. So, and I think we will come up to that with the AI. I'm fairly sure that at some point, superintelligence will be actually developed because a human can do it at some point. And actually, if you look at what Sam Altman, which is the CEO of OpenAI, is actually trying to do, his mission now is really to create AGI. He's been very vocal about that, and I'm fairly sure it will happen. Elon Musk, the same thing. He wanted to create, and he did create X.AI, which is this venture for doing artificial intelligence. Their mission is to understand the universe. If you want to understand the universe, you need to have a super intelligent AI. So it will come. I'm fairly sure it will come at this time. But that's my point of view.
Thank you. Who else got a question? Burning question.
You have a question? So you put your hand up first, but you will get it first.
Thanks. I have two questions. But, the first one is that we have, during the startup years, a few years ago, it was really well known to the winner takes it all. And depending on the subject, I think that one of the risks is that there is some dependency. I don't know about the legal part, but I think that you just call an API from OpenAI, so you are dependent on Microsoft. What about it? Is it really an opportunity that you will only be dependent to them, and if they want to raise their prices, you will have to accommodate with it? And this is my question. So is it really a threat or an opportunity? Isn't there a risk of a monopoly like ASML? They are the only one who do it. If Microsoft wins everything, we are screwed a little bit. So what are the opportunities, all that stuff? And this is the first question. And the lighter question is about another risk, I think. We have a declining capacity in mathematics and literacy. And I recently watched a movie, rewatched it. It's Idiocracy. So when I see about people, giving Gatorade to the crops because the big machine told them to do it, I'm thinking that it's still a joke, but isn't there a risk that we are going to be more and more lazy, because it seems that the studies are showing this? So those are my two questions. First, the threat of dependency, and secondly, the threat of stupidity, even though we certainly are, and me more than you, but
nicely
voilà.
summarized.
Thanks.
Maybe I can, just for the Microsoft part, and I think, yes, I mean, first of all, OpenAI came up with a great opportunity, and one of the things I really wish for a startup is that you become dependable, meaning that everyone will depend on your capabilities, basically. And that's what OpenAI, they really succeed in it. They've been pushed with Microsoft, by Microsoft, sorry. They invest a lot of money in it, but at the same time, there are like alternatives. So for instance, the next one, which is excellent, is Cloud.ai by Anthropic. This one is really great because it has like a 100K window so that you can even upload the document and start discussing with the document. You have another one, just chat the PDF, which is also good. But all these startups, basically what they do, they create alternative. And the last one is the open source models. And I'm fairly sure that will be the main great alternative to everything, to even OpenAI. In the sense that if you democratize AI model, it gives the power to any individual to come up with their own solution. So you can augment that with embeddings and stuff like that. So really, that I don't think that, yes, OpenAI has an advantage, but it won't be, it's not enough. But that's my perspective.
Yeah,
Who
maybe
wants to answer the stupid question?
I will go for the first one, yeah? The first one, well, it's also a question of negotiating with the service provider. Obviously, we've thought about this when we were taking on this license, and as you said, there are alternatives. It's like with today, when you have an outsourcing, it's going to be a pain to change, And it will take some time, but it's not impossible, and I think that is the key thing. And the other question is then how to negotiate your license terms in a way that gives you enough flexibility and time to reorganize yourself based on an alternative tool. And as you mentioned, there are some. And that lets you to the next one.
No, I wasn't offering, but well, why not? So I think, again, what's been touched on already is this sort of fear factor and then the changes during any kind of revolution. And you can find them talking about during the Industrial Revolution, oh, this is going to make everyone lazy because now suddenly machines can do everything. And I think what we're facing will be the same thing here. And again, pointing back to my 10-year-old asking me, well, I don't need to do that, I can just ask ChatGPT or do this. What we were talking about earlier was, with the future of jobs. And you look at things like, for example, prompt engineers. Which will be which is already seeing as being a really, really interesting and critical role forward. And, there are so many new challenges that are going to hopefully keep people from being very lazy. Because if you look at what was mentioned as well with regard to, okay, suddenly there's a lot of mundane tasks. We've got the calculator, we don't need to be writing all the formulas out anymore. There's so many examples historically where you've seen these kind of things happen in the past. And I think what you could almost argue is that it might even take humankind to the sort of next level. If you have enough brain power to stop, not having to crunch together what you would argue right now are fundamentally mundane, then maybe there's lots of options, as we're seeing right now with, love him or hate him, but the work that people like Elon Musk's are doing and things like that. So I would prefer to argue that it's not making us stupid, it's actually giving us more capacity to go even higher.
I think we've got time for maybe 2 more questions. So, look at all these hands up.
You mentioned creativity, saying that human beings, it was our added value. But what about Hollywood and the screenwriters going on strike? How do you see the future of the movie industry and the publishing industry for authors, please?
Anyone?
Have you seen
Hollywood actors here?
Have you seen Netflix recently? Everything looks similar. That is because most of it is scripted, and I think that's where I'll go back to Thomas's starting point that most of the stuff is predictive as of now, and after some time they become banal. So they have this whole genre. This is drama, this is crime, and then they create the same stuff in the genre. One challenge that I definitely see during any transition period is that not enough jobs. So there may be what typically happens is that there is an inequality pyramid. There will be 5 script writers at the top, Aaron Sorkin and all, who would be excellent and they would be amassing maximum amount of reward, and the rest will go out. And that is a problem. I don't have that answer in such a short time, but that is something that governments need to be cognizant, labor unions need to be cognizant and figure out alternatives. And that also touches on your point of stupidity. I will not call it stupidity, but I will call it skills that are easily replaceable. How do you transition people from one skill to another? And that is going to be a societal challenge for sure.
From the legal side, it's also a risk for the big studios to just rely on AI, because whatever is created is not protected by copyright. So it's not in their interest to replace all the writers and all the creatives immediately, because if they want to have the copyright on the movie or whatever, they should have enough human intervention on the script, for instance, in order to make sure that it's capable of being copyright protected. I think that is one factor to keep in mind.
And also keep in mind that AI currently it simulates creativity by remixing whatever exists. So it's not real creativity in the end. So it looks like it, I have to say it, but it's different. So if you want really to be creative, you need to come up with something completely new. Sometimes different story, even different scheme, different the type of actors. I don't know, something different anyway. That's really creative. That's where humans are still like the advantage, and they will continue to have the advantage. The other point is that yes, you will have like less screenwriters. You will have less, people coming. Belonging to the same team. Say you can generate even audio from text now. You can do the other way around. So again, and I will take what Genna was actually saying, is that the AI augment, so multiply productivity, and it also compresses. So it compresses basically activity that could, well, initially was done by multiple people into one task or one single task. And there is another aspect, is that you will have new medium. So for instance, you probably saw the Vision OS by Apple, which creates spatial computing. And the promise behind it, in fact, is to go beyond that, is to go into augmented reality and virtual reality. That's another field where, the experience will be much different. It won't be watching a movie, it will be experiencing a movie. So I'm quite hopeful that it will create new software opportunity where AI will actually be a decisive factor. But in the end, I think we'll still have experience like a lot of new movies, and as Romit was actually saying, based on what we like, because at the end of the day, Netflix or Amazon or whatsoever will produce what we like and what works, what likely generates revenue. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm optimistic about creativity because, just to repeat myself, I mean, there is no data from the future. We only have data from the past. There is no data from the future. The only thing we can train our models on is the past. So if you think about the radically different future, it has to be somehow a human, at least to this point, unless there is some magic happening. So now stupidity, I mean, I must say that it also inspires young people to work on this. I'm very proud of my own daughter. She's working on mathematics and AI. She's 19 or 20 years old. I mean, because she sees a future in this. I mean, it's a bit like, yeah, there's a cool kids now actually going into this space. So I hope they will provide a not so stupid future.
Thank you. I know you all want to network, and the great news is you can talk to these good people as well outside over a drink and something to eat. But I think I promised one more question. So, oh yes, he just beat you. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. I have a bit of a technical question, maybe to round it all up. Let's take the example of ChatGPT again. If you ask ChatGPT a question, it doesn't understand logically your question. It does not understand the answer that it's giving. It's just generating a response based on Bayesian math or statistical math. How can we overcome this? How can we get to a stage where artificial intelligence actually can reason to at least a comparable degree of human intelligence? Do we have to completely forego statistical processes inside AI, or how can we get to the point where the tool is actually understanding what it is saying?
Your question, in fact, is I think we shouldn't work by exclusion, meaning that, for instance, LLM, I think, is one of the functions of general intelligence. So, for instance, we have language, we can listen, we can have reason, stuff like that. So it's one of the functions that will lead us to general intelligence. So another aspect is that if there is a point where we try to foster to have a lot of APIs in general, and in companies. And the reason why we want to have APIs is that, application programming interfaces, is that you give a means to the AI to start fetching data through, secure channels. The combination of AI and APIs, and you probably heard about ChatGPT plugins, for instance, that's how it's done. So you give access to the AI, which only resonates at the language level, to understanding that has been, in fact, processed and, organized by humans in general. So it's a combination of both. At some point, we will come to a situation, again, I say, superior intelligence, we will come to that. But there are some aspects where you need to have other functions that are probably lacking today. Yann Lequin, the head of AI at Meta, has an interesting word model that explains how, for different functions that actually simulate the brain function, we could have a word understanding that we can actually model to an AI so that we can combine, for instance, LLM with something else, something is missing.
I'll just add a 30-second addition to that, exactly what Yannick mentioned. So right now, I think there is a limitation of imagination when we use the word statistics. We are only thinking mimetic, statistics as predictive. There is already a certain amount of systems built in OpenAI, and frankly, I do not have access to that, but they are saying they have already gone non-mimetic. Okay, even human beings learn mimetic. A child learns from the parent. That's how we mime behaviors. already we have reached the early infancy of non-mimetic behavior. How that will shape, that is potentially going to answer your question, but till it is open source, and that's also the part of tech inequality. Actually, I guess none of us really know what is going inside OpenAI right now. They are 2 years ahead of the curve, but they're only releasing information that they deem appropriate. So that factor is also there.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. I think we will take the rest of the questions when we are all outside networking. I thought this was really interesting, and I see so many hands up that we couldn't take all the questions. I think that it was also something that inspired all of you. Now, this could maybe then, if you decide to write this book, Catherine, on the Christmas dinner, that could be part of the conversation.
I will be part there. I'm not inspired yet.
She's just denying it. I found it.
So for now, before we go to the networking part, thank you so much to all of you. And as a thank you, of course, we have a small present for you, but it has nothing to do with AI. It is really also on behalf of the group, and I think if you can help to distribute.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you to all of you who have come tonight. I'm going to take my cheat list because I cannot remember all of our events. We have a lot of events going on, and therefore there will already be one tomorrow. So if there's any last-minute registrations, then I'm sure Rebecca will be happy to help you with those. This is on the social elections to 2024 and how to prepare for and manage the staff delegation elections in that year. So that's tomorrow already in the evening. And then beginning of November, 6th of November, we have an event coming up, Scaling Up Your Business from Luxembourg, which is together with Spurkeys and Lux Times, where it will be again a joint event on that. And then 15th of November, there's a warming up for the COP28 that is also in collaboration with the St. George's School. So there's more to come, but I thought let's stick to 3, right? Thank you, everyone, and I hope that we will have the opportunity to network outside, and thank you to everyone who've helped organizing, and also thank you again to Banque de Luxembourg and to our sponsor from Lux States, and of course to you, the panelists, for all those insights. It was really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you.